737s that they do fly are called 737-400s or even 500s, which is the latest series of the 737 craft, and virtually a new plane. Don't know the precise date of this one that had gone in the ocean, but they tend to fly a newer 737 plane. The pilot that I spoke with a little bit earlier here from Alaska Airlines was, of course, needless to say, shocked about this and very surprised that one of the 737s would have had a problem at all. And again, they don't fly a large number of them, and he is familiar with being in the plane. He himself, he said, normally flies an MD-80 aircraft and was just now expanding his own role from the MD-80 to the 737 as well. He also mentioned that this plane normally overflies the Los Angeles area at 31,000 feet on that flight up to San Francisco. He also mentioned as well that the plane normally does not have a lot of San Francisco passengers on board. It usually makes a stop there that is principally a fuel stop, and they do have a passenger exchange, but he said it's very small. Normally that flight load is people that have come all the way from Seattle down to Puerto Vallarta.
Well, I think where some of the confusion arose, David, was apparently an MD-80 was scheduled to make that flight, and at some point something must have changed. But even when we're talking about 70 people being on board, it would make sense that it was a 737 and not the MD-80, which usually carries more people.
Yeah, a little bit larger plane. That's true, Laura.
This is a very young fleet. According to the airline, the average age of their aircraft is 7.5 years, and that would make it the youngest fleet in the nation. That information coming from the airline. And speaking of the airline, which we pointed out earlier, is headquartered in Seattle, Laura.
We're going to switch now to Liz Roca, who is on the scene there. She's with Como TV in Seattle at the airport, where I'm sure there are a great many distressed family members. Liz?
Some of the distressed family members have already begun to arrive here, but they are swiftly being taken away and to a special room 1 floor above us here, being kept away from the media for the time being. Alaska Airlines is currently trying to mobilize a crisis center for those family members where they will have grief counselors, which it turns out are full-time employees of Alaska Airlines, to help take care of some of the questions and some of the tragic emotion that is bound to abound here in the next couple of hours as people begin to get wind of the crash and arrive here to what would have been a time to pick up their relatives. We understand there will be a briefing from Alaska Airlines officials in just a short amount of time, but frankly we have not been able to get much information here at the terminal. Many stunned Alaska employees, a few passengers who seem to be a little leery now about getting on their own flight, but for that matter, not a lot of activity at the terminal. They're just seeing a few family members begin to trickle in and be quickly taken away 1 floor above us into this crisis center. We're told that Alaska Airlines employees, a group called the CARE Response Team, trains for this type of thing quarterly. Although Alaska rarely has a crash, every 3 months or so this CARE team trains for just this event, and they feel that they are more than prepared to deal with the grief that will undoubtedly be here, and these family members and their questions. This flight was due to arrive here about 8:50 this evening, so we haven't seen a lot of family members at this point, but in the next hour or so, they are expected to trickle in. Reporting live at SeaTac Airport, Liz Roca, back to you.
Liz, that's an interesting arrival time at 8:50. Our information here is that this aircraft went down at about 4:35 here in the Los Angeles area. So there was going to be apparently quite a lengthy layover in San Francisco. I haven't made that flight from SFO up to SeaTac in a number of years. Is that like an hour-and-a-half flight?
It is. Actually, you're talking to someone who's a native of the Bay Area, and I take this flight very, very frequently on Alaska Airlines. So it is about an hour 35 flying time. They usually schedule about an hour and 50 minutes for the entire flight to and from the gate. So that does seem like an awfully long layover in San Francisco, but we just confirmed just a few moments ago with Alaska Airlines officials here who actually looked at their computer. 8:50 was the scheduled arrival time here, so that is probably one of the reasons I imagine that we are not seeing a number of family members arrive yet. One comment that seems to sort of continually get made here is that a number of the Alaska Airlines employees feel sorry for those people who may be coming directly from work or may not have heard about this crash, will arrive here tonight at the airport expecting to greet a loved one, and instead will be met with some very tragic news.
That'll be devastating.
Oh, it'd be horrible. What would the procedure be at this point then, Liz? Will they begin calling these families if, say, they haven't heard, if you have a loved one at work who is going straight to the airport to pick up a friend or a family member?
I don't think they have an official system for calling family members, but this care response team, as I mentioned, are well versed in dealing with the emotions and the procedures around an airplane crash. They, I think, will expect to greet these family members either at the ticket counter or at the gate and take them right away to this room that they have set up one floor above us upstairs, where these people can sit down, get some information, get some care from grief counselors, and begin to sort out what has happened here. But to my knowledge, there is no system to actually call these people ahead of time and let them know what has happened. They will just have to find out when they arrive at the airport.
And we're sure that you folks in Seattle, radio and television, are all over the air with the story right now, and anyone who was in fact going to head out to SeaTac to pick someone up is probably receiving this word through the media, and you undoubtedly will be seeing more of these people arriving at the airport. It is devastating. Again, I harken back to when I was at the Cerritos air crash, and that plane went right down into the center of the community, Laura, and it separated it, and there were family members on one side of the community and family on the other side, not knowing who was alive, who had survived, and as the news continues to come in, it is just heartbreaking to watch people get this information. It's just devastating. The fact that this airline has these grief counselors helps, but it certainly doesn't ease the pain, but it does help. It allows them to get focused, to get their bearings somewhat, and to have someone to ask the question at a time like this: where do we go from here? What kind of plans do I make now? Is it my responsibility to learn about a funeral, or what is the airline's obligation at a time like this? So it sounds like that this airline, through a number of years of experience, has put together a crisis team that will be able to help these people in their time of need.
And tragically, we have learned from other plane crashes, as you've mentioned, that history has taught us that families and loved ones need to be assembled and they need to get as much information as they can, all the while the rescue efforts continue. And it is a very delicate balance of trying to give out enough information and yet giving the emergency personnel the latitude that they need to do their jobs. But there were earlier plane crashes where family members went back later and said, hey, we needed more information and we didn't get it. We were held in the dark. And so they've actually even pushed for legislation.
Absolutely.
Information would come more freely.
All right, Laura, let's recap what we know. We know that a plane and an Alaska Airlines 737 took off from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, en route to San Francisco with a layover, and then was to head up to Seattle. The aircraft, as we understand, radioed LAX that it had a mechanical problem on board. The pilot, the crew, chose not to land at LAX, but to push on north. Once they got out of the LAX flight corridor, there was a change of mind. They turned and they came back to LAX, and that's when a park ranger on Anacapa Island saw the plane go in.
Yes, and according to the FAA, they're saying that the plane went down at 17,000 feet. That is the last time that it was seen on the radar. And it would appear that during the time they went past LAX and proceeded further about 30, 40 miles north of L.A., the problem, whatever it was, resumed. It was some kind of a mechanical problem, and they deemed it so life-threatening that they needed to turn around. But time, unfortunately, had run out for this crew and the people on board that flight.
Yes, we learned that figure 17,000 feet, that it was that fell off the radar screen from 17,000 feet from a spokesperson at San Francisco International Airport. And we are not pilots, but 17,000 feet is lower than they normally fly. So the aircraft may have come down trying to stabilize with this mechanical failure at 17,000 feet, but was unable to correct it. The plane then slammed into the Pacific Ocean, leaving a wide oil slick and a lot of small debris on the water surface. But as we have been watching live here on ABC 7 Eyewitness News, there is no sign of survivors.
That's what we're looking at right now, the live shot that we leave you with as we hand it over to the 6 o'clock news team, Mark Brown and Michelle Tuzzi, this race.